Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be here. And I'm glad to learn that most of the people who are attending are students. So it's always good. I think this is a very pertinent talk for students. And I would say, even for somebody who's not a student, I think this makes a lot of sense. But nevertheless, for students, I think it doubly makes it so. Anyway, first of all, very happy to be here. This is the first time I'm speaking in an Infosec write up con, IWCON. So I'm very happy to be here, and it's always nice to do these kind of community-driven events and speak at these community-driven events. Now, today's talk is actually something that is close to my heart. Over the last 10 years as an educator, right? Now, a lot of you might know me from AppSec Engineer, and AppSec Engineer is only about a year and a half old, but I've been a security educator for the better part of 10, 11 years now. I've been training on security for a very long time. So I've seen real world stories of both good and bad in terms of how security skills are built and sometimes not built. So this is the reason I thought I'll talk about this area, and I'm glad to see that people uh, who are currently getting into the security space, or are looking to get into the security space, might be watching this talk. So I'm always happy to see those kind of folks who will take the most out of this, perhaps. So let's get started. I'm not going to waste too much time. I'm going to get started. So a little bit about me. I think folks already introduced me, but just a little bit about me. I run two companies. One is a application security consulting company, and then, of course, most of you may know me from AppSec Engineer. AppSec Engineer is a security training platform where you can learn AppSec, CloudSec, Kubernetes security, threat modeling, pretty much all of the stuff that you would need to get and retain and grow in your job in application security. So that's really what AppSec Engineer does. We provide hands-on labs, and we provide a whole ton of content, and we constantly keep adding new content and coming up with new stuff that is changing in the industry. That's what we do. That's what I do. My team does this. So this is what we do. I've had 15 years of application security experience. Now, uh, this is something that I started off largely in the application security assurance side. So largely in terms of penetration testing, auditing, reviewing, those kind of things. I started there. But around 2014 or 2015, it really started becoming about, hey, how do we scale these things? How do we get ahead of the application security problem? How do you scale this for large companies, large teams? How do you make sure application security is scaled across the board? That was the time where DevOps had started to become a thing. In fact, I think I was perhaps one of the first few ones to start talking about DevSecOps, or back then it was called SecDevOps, or whatever you want to call it. I created the world's first course on DevSecOps, and then from then on, I've been doing a lot of work in scaling application security. I do a lot of work in automation. So I consider myself sort of like a security futurist. I kind of try and focus on where things are going. So that's been the case with DevSecOps. That's been the case with cloud security automation, Kubernetes, and now, of course, I do a lot of work in the AI space. I'm doing a lot of research in harnessing AI for a lot of security use cases. Although I believe that we're just starting off in AI, and it's very nascent. And for those of you who are interested in this part of the talk, the last part of the talk, I'm going to be talking about a little bit of AI and what that means to all of us. Right? Today, AI has completely come in and changed a few things. So, what does that mean for us as security professionals? Are our jobs at risk? Are our lives at risk? What happens? So, this is something that I'm going to talk about towards the end of today's session. So, those of you who are interested can stick on till then and kind of learn about that perspective as well. Outside of this, I train and I speak at major international events. I train at Black Hat every year, multiple times. I've trained at DEF CON several times. I trained at OWASP, but just finished one in Washington, D.C. I train, speak in multiple places. Those of you who follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn know I talk a lot about threat modeling. And in fact, those of you who are interested in looking for some of my content, I'm just going to post some of those resources. I think they're in the resources. I'm not sure if is there a way to something I need to activate or not, but nevertheless, they're in the resources section. Please take a look. We also have a lot of YouTube resources and so on. So this is what I do. Now let's get started with the whole thing. Right now, today's agenda is basically how what are the skills that you need to be a great application security professional today and a great application security professional tomorrow? What does that mean? What does that entail? What does that require? What are those skills, and what are those essential skills? What are those things that you need to progress with? How that's going to happen, right? That's basically the point of this talk. And for those of you who are building a career in application security, I think this is a very important aspect of what you need to do, because a lot of people come into application security. I've been asked by a lot of people every day. People message me on LinkedIn saying, "I'm doing this. What else do I need to do?" So this talk is basically my way of addressing that particular problem. What else do I need to do? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? Where do I need to go? What is the progression for me, right? So that's basically what it is. So I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we're seeing. So the way we used to do application security 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, has completely changed from the way we do application security today. That's simply because the way we do application delivery, the way we build applications and deploy applications, has also changed completely over the last 5 years, 10 years, whatever. You can take any period, and it's undergoing rapid change as and when we speak. So it becomes a bit of a challenge that we have to deal with. Then we have to figure out the gaps between the actual state and the desired state. Now, when somebody says that, hey, I am an application, or they want an application security engineer, let's say a company wants an application security engineer, what do they mean, the desired state versus what is the actual state? What is the problem? What are the differences there? And of course, we want to be able to thrive in uncertainty. One of the big problems with a lot of security professionals that I see is that they get into this mold and they get into a rut, and that rut becomes a big problem because they're not able to evolve. Their careers kind of get stuck in the process. And if you are not able to constantly reinvent yourself, it's going to become really difficult moving forward. So let's talk about some of those skills we need, and of course, how do we acquire some of these skills, right? So all of these things are things I'm going to talk about in this session. And just for just to put it out there, I don't come from a security background in education. I actually am trained as an accountant, education wise, but because I love security, I kind of got into it, and it kind of became something I took up, and I built multiple apps and so on and so forth. In fact, AppSec Engineer, the initial application itself, I built, and I still write code every day of my life. So that is just to give you an idea that if I can do this, anybody can do this, right? So it's anybody who is actually interested, curious, and wants to, and puts in the productive effort to do this can do this. So just make sure that I just wanted to say that because I wanted everyone to get the perspective that everyone can do this. It's not some rocket science. All right, let's move on. So first of all, let's talk about the brave. What are the challenges we face in today's landscape? What are the issues that we face? What are the challenges? What are the new things that we can do in this landscape that we have? So AppSec previously, when you looked at companies, I would say about 5-6 years ago, AppSec was basically this. AppSec was basically just pen testing. A lot of application security was largely about pen testing. So a little bit of vulnerability scanning. Not that many people knew the difference. A lot of people just thought, oh, vulnerability scan is a pen test. I'm sure you've seen some of those scenarios. Some of them did security reviews. They did a little bit of threat modeling. They did a little bit of consulting. But largely it was these three things, right? This was basically what AppSec was. So a lot of AppSec roles were just basically application security validation, verification stuff. But this has changed because today application security has become this. It's already been all this stuff, but then it's become bug bounty program management. It's become SaaS and automation in the CI/CD. It's cloud security, Kubernetes security, threat modeling, security architecture review, supply chain security, the big buzzword from 2023, supply chain security. Now suddenly everybody is taking this seriously and thinking about, oh my God, what's going to happen to our CI/CD pipeline? What's going to happen to our third-party dependencies? How do we secure it? How do we manage it? What is this compliance requirement telling us to do? All of this stuff. Supply chain security has become big, and it's constantly increasing, right? This list is actually constantly increasing, which is causing a lot of application security teams and security teams within organizations in general to be like this, right? They are tired, they are understaffed, they are, and in many cases, they're also underqualified. They're not able to handle some of the changes that are hitting them in the way applications are being delivered. I remember this. I was we're doing some work with a pretty big bank in the APAC region, and we were talking to them, and I was talking to one of the teams, and I was a this was around 4 or 5 years ago. I was just getting into a little bit of Kubernetes stuff, and I was interested in figuring out, okay, they're deploying on containers. Are you using Kubernetes? And they said, yeah, we are using Kubernetes. We are already using Kubernetes. We've started deploying this. And I said, okay, how are you doing security reviews for Kubernetes? Who's doing the security reviews? How are you handling security for Kubernetes? And the application delivery team at that time said, what? No, we're not telling the security team that we're using Kubernetes. If we tell them, then they'll block us. At every given point, they'll block us. So we're not telling anybody that we're using it. We're just going to use it and they'll figure it out. Right. So over time, they'll figure it out. So a lot of times, application security teams are not only kept out of the loop, and application security professionals are not only kept out of the loop, but they're kind of bypassed in many ways. So in some cases, they're loaded up with a lot of this to do. In some cases, they're just bypassed, which is a bigger problem in my opinion, in many cases. So that's because really today everything has become dev-centric, right? Now this is very interesting tweet from Justin Garrison, who said essentially the OSI model is now all software. That's software right from the ground up. There's nothing else today. Everything has become software, which means everything has become dev-centric, which means you have DevOps, you have dev that has consumed this, dev that has consumed that. Everything has become as code or dev-centric. I don't know if you've noticed this. I'm not sure. How many of you have noticed this? I'm not sure if there's a way to raise your hands or something like that. But if you noticed this about the security industry, a lot of it has become as code. Not only with security, the way we deliver applications, a lot of it has become as code. Infrastructure as code. Security as code. Policy as code. It's suddenly become quite extensive to be like this, right? This is what you're seeing with a lot of the models that we see today, right? So this is simply because we've had a history of reducing constraints, right? We have started developing and building apps at a super fast pace, right? We went from waterfall methodologies to agile methodologies. We stopped using terrible source control management systems like SVN and CVS. We moved to Git. Git has allowed people to move much faster. We of course have the cloud and infrastructure as code that has allowed us to move much faster. A lot of us went from monolithic applications to microservices and APIs and different services for different types of use cases. It became that, and all of it became CI/CD based deployment, automated deployment. So the way we're building apps today has undergone a sea change, right, from the way we used to do it, which means that application security has had to evolve, and unfortunately, it's not evolved as fast as we would like it to evolve. And a lot of it has to do with skills, and a lot of it has to do with the way we train ourselves to become application security engineers, right? So this is basically what has happened. So this means that dev has consumed ops. That's why you have DevOps and you have DevSecOps. So dev has consumed ops because today a lot of the ops that used to be a lot of manual commands and setting up Linux servers and things like that has become infrastructure as code. You just have packages, the container images being deployed in container orchestration systems. You have it being done at massive scale. You're able to use cloud APIs to orchestrate a whole bunch of deployment patterns. This has become the reality. Dev has consumed ops. Dev has consumed QA and test automation, right? Today, you have test automation that is very plug and play, easy to work with. So this has become a serious part of this, right? So the way dev has started to consume ops, it started to consume test. It has also started to consume security. Now, the very fact that you have DevSecOps is because we are trying to see that how do we introduce as code patterns in security, right? So if you look at the modern SaaS, I don't know how many of you use SemGrep. Again, this is a question I should have probably put in the poll, unfortunately. I don't know how many of you have heard of SemGrep, use SemGrep. Now, a lot of the SaaS tools today, or even the supply chain tools or the DaaS tools today are configurable. I'm sure a lot of you use Nuclei. I'm sure a lot of people use Nuclei in the room, right? A lot of people are using Nuclei. I can see some thumbs going up. Now, Nuclei, the very fact that there's something like a Nuclei today was unimaginable for us 5-6 years ago. Simply because Nuclei has made it as code. It has made testing, it's democratized testing in a way that you can essentially write these YAML manifests and get going and start testing your application. That's basically this. So dev is consuming security. That is a dev-centric approach. as whenever you write something as code, you are essentially doing a dev-centric approach, and that started consuming security as well. And not only has it started consuming security, it has coming for policy and compliance soon. So tomorrow you're also going to see things like PCI DSS as code, or you're already seeing compliance as code. You're starting to see. I don't know the specific. There's something called OSCAL. I'm not a compliance person so much. I'm not a compliance expert. I do know a little bit about the space. There's something called OSCAL, where you have some kind of open source compliance assessment frameworks, and you can essentially report compliance related reporting, policy related reporting through an automated as code approach. You also have policy as code. In fact, a lot of the cloud tools and a lot of the cloud native control planes allow you to compose policies that will control authorization, that will control how people can access this, or what kind of access they should have, or what kind of patterns they should access with, and so on. So dev is basically consuming everything, right? So it's just happening. There's no two things about it. It's happening, and it's continuing to happen, which means I think it tells you what you need to know in many ways, that your application security career is going to be defined by this approach, which means that you need to start getting in line with the fact that, hey, dev is consuming all of this, so I need to understand dev first. For me, dev first becomes a big thing. And I started doing that. In fact, let me give you a small story about this, right? I used to do a lot of security testing from about 2010, not even 2010, 2008 to 2012, 2013. And I started to realize so many security things only when I built my first ever application. So I built my first ever application, which is a vulnerability management application. Only when I built that application and it did a bunch of, I wrote a bunch of open source code and things like that. Only then I realized actually that, oh yeah, this thing has a completely different perspective. I was only seeing it from, hey, I'm a pen tester, I'm going to use Burp Suite, I'm going to hammer your application, I'm going to tell you, oh yeah, your application is compromised. How do you fix it? I don't care. It's your problem. I used to have that attitude. But over time, I started to realize that, oh my God, this dev thing is huge. The scope of it, the space, the overall impact of it is massive. So this is something that I want to talk about as well. So this is happening, which means that today organizations are basically looking to do this, right? They're looking to embed security in different aspects of their SDLC, right? They're not, previously it used to be just security before deployment. I used to just get a deployment thing and say, okay, you please run a pen test against this and tell me if there's issues. But now it's essentially they want to do all of these things. They want to ensure that they're shifting left. They're able to do all of these different security activities at the earliest possible stage, and then move forward with different security checks across the SDLC. And this is something that all of you need to understand. If you are building a career in application security, the more value you can add to this, the stuff below, right? The activities below, the better your career is going to be, right? The better your chances of having a highly sought after career is going to be, right? So that's something that you need to understand, right? So let me get into some of the specifics around this. At the same time, we have this, right? We have a skill shortage. This is true. I know some of you might have read this and you'll be thinking, okay, what has this got to do with me? Skill shortage. Yeah, everybody says skill shortage, but there is, I'm not able to break through this, or I'm not able to get the job I want, or whatever it is. There is a skill shortage. There is a skill shortage for people with skills. Right? I know it sounds a little stupid. There is a skills shortage for people with skills, because companies today they don't have the necessary skills, which will give them the kind of security results that they want. So I have a question. Do you mean to say development background is important? Will have an added advantage in AppSec career? 100%. Development background is a super advantage in an AppSec career. You can definitely learn it the other way as well. If you're an AppSec person, I would encourage you to do some development. You don't have to build massive applications, but definitely it is a big advantage. So anyway, so there is a skill shortage, but the skill shortage is something that not everybody can fill, because companies don't want just anybody, right? They want people who can solve their problems. Okay, so I want to launch on AWS. What are the security things I need to do? I need to solve that problem with somebody with skill, somebody with hands-on capabilities on AWS security. I need to solve that problem. I need to set up this Kubernetes cluster. My development team wants to set up this Kubernetes cluster. How do I enforce authorization on Kubernetes? I need somebody with that skill. This is the skill shortage. Not just saying that, oh, there's a skill shortage, anybody will get a job in security. That's not true. Companies are very focused on what they want, and sometimes they're unrealistic. They expect the moon and the sun, but serious companies know what they want, and they'll go after what they want, and they will get people of what they want. But it is also short. They are also finding it difficult simply because the number of people who have these skills, especially hands-on capabilities in the areas I'm talking about, are few. Right, so that is something that you have an opportunity to fill in. If you are somebody who can kind of mold yourself into these capabilities that companies want, that is something that I think you can really solve some big problems and make yourself extremely valuable in this particular process. So this is a real problem. This is happening, but again, it's not one of those problems that say, I'm going to hire anybody and get them to do this job. They're only going to hire people who can actually solve the problems, and those are the people who have the skills to be able to address at least some of their problems, if not all of their problems. So a lot of times I've heard these kind of issues, and I've seen these kind of issues. A lot of security people start at security first. Now, whenever somebody and this happens, I'm sure this happens to some of you. I'm not sure how many people agree with me on this, but let me tell you from my own experience. I've hired people over the last 14, 15 years, and I've run multiple security companies. And for me, one of the things that always drives me nuts is when somebody says that, okay, I want to learn, I'm a pen tester, so I want to learn pen testing. So I have this new system. I want this new system of Kubernetes or the cloud. I want to learn pen testing Kubernetes or the cloud. I think that's an entirely wrong way to approach the problem. You need to learn the platform first, or you need to learn the technology first, and then you will find yourself having much more skill set into the security part of it, rather than approaching it from a security first mindset. Always remember this. If you approach the problem from a security first mindset, you will always find yourself getting subpar results. But if you approach it from a platform first or technology first mindset, you will change the game for yourself. So focus on that and not security first. Right? Security is a byproduct of the platform. Always remember that. It is a secondary dimension of the platform. It's a dimension of the platform, not the platform. Right? That's very important. The second thing, several security professionals think security is only offensive security. Now, this is another big mistake. Offensive security is cool, it's fun, it's sexy, right? I get it. I completely get it. Whenever I've got a Metapreter shell, or whenever I've used Burp Suite and used an intruder and then been able to get an IDOR, or been able to do a very fancy second order injection or whatever it is, I've enjoyed myself. It's been a truly rewarding experience. But offensive security is a very small part of the puzzle. The biggest opportunities today lie in the defensive security sector, right? If you are, because end of the day, companies want to solve. Why do they look at offensive security? Because they want to get defensive security. The ultimate objective is defensive security. So if you are able to position yourself in the defensive security space, that is where the real gold is, right? Defensive security, you will solve real problems. And I'm not saying offensive does not solve problems. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that offensive is not important. I've been an offensive security practitioner. I love it. But I'm just saying that today, especially with an engineering first culture coming into most companies, they have a larger group of defensive roles that they need to fill. So your value is really in the defensive side, right? So I would say that for you to be able to get a job, for you to be able to advance in your career and so on, I would say think from that perspective. Knowing offensive security is great. And knowing defensive security well means you already know offensive security well. Believe me, defensive security is hard. In many ways, I find it much harder than offensive security. So knowing it well is a great first step to doing this, right? So that's something to think about. Several security professionals think in AppSec they don't need to know how to code. This is not true. you will need to know how to code. I've seen a lot of these LinkedIn statements and Twitter statements saying, "Oh, there are lots of jobs in security. You don't need to know how to code." Yes, there are lots of jobs in security. If it's in the GRC space, you don't perhaps need to know how to code. But if you're trying to get into AppSec, you want to break into AppSec, you need to know how to code. I'm going to say that today. I know a lot of people might say, "No, this is horrible. This is terrible advice." But let me tell you something real talk. You need to know how to code, right? You may not be able to, you don't have to write a, you don't have to, dream up Amazon and write that in a week or 10 days or whatever it is. But you need to know how to code. You need to understand how systems work. And for you to understand systems work, and especially given the dev first background that I spoke about before, you need to know how to code some language. It doesn't matter what, Python, JavaScript, whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? But you need to know how to code. You need to understand how systems work. And to understand how systems work, you need to know how to code. That's the first step, right? Don't forget that. And the other big thing that I think a lot of people ignore is soft skills. This is the worst thing that people ignore, right? Soft skills is the area that allows you to move forward in your career, right? The ability to not only know things, but the ability to communicate things in a way that does not piss off the other person. Believe me, I've been at the receiving end, I've been at the giving end of this. I have literally told developers that what you've done is absolute garbage. And I thought I was really cool when I was doing this. And it's terrible. It's just a terrible way to do this, right? Because they will hate you, you'll not get anything done, and your outcomes, remember, are tied to their outcomes. Right? So if you don't have the skills to be able to negotiate, convince, coax people into getting security done, you will never go anywhere in your life, right? Don't think you're cool by saying that, hey, I hacked this application, I'm so cool, you're stupid. So, yeah, good luck to you. That doesn't work. That never works. So please make sure that you have soft skills and be able to, not just soft skills in the sense in terms of humility and things like that. That's important, yes, but also know how to communicate in a way that is not abrasive to people, that actually makes sense to people, and that drives the value to people. End of the day, you need to be able to create value for people, and that's really what you want, right? So that's something. I'm getting a few questions on the Q&A panel. I'm going to take it at the end if you don't mind. I don't want to break my chain of thought. Sorry about that. I'll try and take it at a logical juncture closer to the end. I'll just try and take that closer to the end so that I'm not missing out. So let's analyze this, right? So let's think about how it is. What are the skills we need? What are the skills we need to get, and so on. Let's analyze this. So when you're looking at skills, I typically think of skills in multiple parameters. I think about skills in a way that is, it should fit in today, and it should also be future proof, right? It should not only be okay for, yeah, I have the skills today, but tomorrow I don't, right? It's pointless. Those skills are not really useful to me. It should be something that gives me a way to progress in the future, right? That's what we want. Those are skills. Those are good skills. It needs to have a progression of required skill mapped for career trajectory. You don't want to remain junior the whole time, right? You're going to move up in your life. I've seen this, and I believe me, I as a person who's recruited people, who runs a company and all of that stuff, I see people who can move super fast up the value chain, and I've seen people completely stay stagnant and even go down the value chain. And you need to have the ability to understand that, okay, these are the skills that are for me here. I'm right here right now. But if I want to move up, these are the skills I need to have. And if I want to move further up, these are the skills I want to have, right? So there needs to be a progression of skills that you need to acquire. And this is something I'm going to talk about. I'll actually share those skills with you. And you need to have a baseline, which means that you need to have deep understanding. A lot of people in this world skate by with surface level understanding. You don't want to be that person, because surface level understanding gets basically exposed very quickly, right? Surface level understanding gets exposed extremely quickly, because once you're talking to somebody of substance on the other side, let's say you're talking to a senior developer and you give them some you give them basic advice. I'm sure some of you have done this. Let's say you're a pen tester, you go to a developer and say, yeah, you need to do input validation. How many of you have done this? You said you need to do input validation. I've done this in the past, just to give you an idea. I've gone to a super senior developer and I said, you need to do input validation. And that person's like, exactly, tell me, how do I do input validation? Give me the approach to do input validation. And I'm like, sorry, validation, right? So this is the problem that most of the security industry has even today. We are just a lot of us just skate by with surface level understanding. We do not get deep into the subject. Getting deep is very important, or at least be able to explore it in depth, right? You should have curiosity. You should be like, okay, this is the space. Okay, I want to learn about file upload vulnerabilities today. How do I go deeper here? What are the things I need to understand here? What are the different ways? Create mind maps for yourself. Learn things in a structured way, and that's something that you need to start to adapt, and that will help you in every different aspect of your career. So deep understanding, hands-on skills. Now a lot of people are super good with paper skills. They're like, oh, I know encryption, I know this, oh yeah, I know how this works, I know how AWS works, I know how container registries work, and I know how secure you can secure container registry. Have you secured a container registry? How do you do this with Terraform? How do you do this on the cloud? How do you do this on the console? They're like, I don't know. I've seen it, and I know how it can be done, but I've never done it. It's like basically saying I'm a swimming champion, but I never got into the pool, right? So that doesn't work. That again just does not work. It does not scale. It does not make any sense. Hands-on skills are essential. You can't hope to achieve anything in this space without hands-on skills, right? So this is something you need to have. And ability to communicate your thoughts, right? Now, whether it be written, whether it be verbal, or both. Ideally, I would always prefer written more than verbal, because if you have good written skills, you'll automatically have relatively good verbal skills, right? So my advice to people is always try and cultivate written skills first, and and then maybe think about verbal skills. A lot of people tried the other way around, just like security first. Verbal skills, yes, you can acquire them, and that takes some other pieces, right? So verbal skills, you have to get over fear of things like stage fear and fear of speaking in public and all that stuff. Those are the other problems. But once you have good written skills, you have good language. Once you have good language, you're able to apply that to verbal skills. So that leap is not that much more complicated than the other way around, right? So I think that's very important for people to do. A lot of people miss that out, and I feel that's a way to go about it. Let's look at the skills, and let's talk about some of those skills now, right? So I've basically divided the skill sets into entry, intermediate, and advanced, simply because I wanted to provide this kind of a progression for people to actually work towards. So at the entry level, basically what I'm thinking about is basic AppSec skills, working AppSec like OWASP top 10, OWASP or ASVS level of skills, good written and verbal skills, working knowledge of cloud and DevOps. At this point in time, you may not be a DevSecOps guru, right? But understanding how these different systems work is very important, right? Understanding how cloud works, understanding how DevOps works, understanding how CI/CD is done, how do automated deploys work. This is something that you need to have, right? This is, I think, a very important thing, and you need to have basic threat modeling skills, like understanding, basic threat modeling approaches like Stride and so on. Understanding that would be a good first step at entry level. Now, if you do this itself, you will be far more than most entry level people today. Let me assure you, you will be far better than most entry level people today. But I think that this is the roadmap for what you are at, typically, in my opinion, in entry level. Once you start getting in and once you start exercising these skills at an entry level, then you can start thinking about how you can build on top of this, right? Now, here you can start getting into security engineering skills. That's really what I would call DevSecOps skills, right? Being able to do SAST and SAST automation, being able to use supply chain security automation, maybe some DAST automation if you need to, whatever it is, those things start to become very important here. And advanced threat modeling skills, being able to come up with threat models fast within the SDLC is a very, very underrated skill that companies are looking for today. Companies today are desperately looking to threat model. Believe me, I do threat modeling training, and in the month of January, I am doing 5 threat modeling trainings. So, which means that companies want to acquire the skill. People want to acquire the skill, but a lot of people don't have the skill. And this skill is not as easy to get. A lot of people think that, okay, I just need to understand the threats. I just need to come up with threats. Coming up with threats only works if you have a solid baseline of security skills, if you understand security threats at its deep, only then you can come up with valid threat modeling scenarios, right? So threat modeling skills are going to be extremely important at this stage. Advanced threat modeling skills would be I have a bunch of questions. I'm going to answer them as we go along. Thank you so much for asking these questions. These are very valid questions. I'm going to answer them as we get into it. I believe we have some time also. We have some time even after this. So anyway, so security architecture review. So the other thing that I would say after this point is really to build on security architecture review. So when you look at a complex system and you're able to use your threat modeling skills to be able to understand that, oh, these are the things that can happen when this component interacts with this component. So these are the things we need to implement here. Or when your front end interacts with an API gateway, these are the things that can happen. So we need to figure out that these are the potential security architecture elements that we need to put in. These are things that developers need to do. These are things that others need to do. Things like this become very important at this stage. Right, I'm actually going to share the bigger threat model here. I mean, not threat model, skill map. So yeah, so here this is kind of the expanded skill map, and I'll share this on both LinkedIn and Twitter. So don't worry about it. I'll share the slide deck. So you'll see that security architecture review, excellent written and verbal. At this point in time, when you're at an intermediate level in your career, you're not only communicating with security engineers or security team, you're also communicating with developers. You might be communicating with project managers. This is what you should aim for. You need to make sense to them. And to make sense to them, you need to speak their language. And to speak their language, you can't just do it, maybe not at this level so much. You might have to go past this, transcend this level to move to the next level, which is your intermediate level, which you have all these skills and you can say that, hey, this is what I want you to do. You are doing input. I want you to do input validation this way, where you use JSON schema and do this. And based on this, I think you can get much better results. That is the way you talk to developers, or that is the way you talk when you talk to PMs. You have to change your orientation ever so slightly. You have to tell them that this vulnerability has this impact that has resulted in this breach, which has caused this dollar value impact. All right. So when you're talking to those people, you need to be able to apply a security threat and break it down into simple impact that they can understand, either in dollar value or in reputation value or in lost business, things like that. Those are the kind of skills you need to have at this level of your of your career. And of course, once you get to the advanced level, that's when once you get to the advanced level, that is something that you really need to step the game up quite a bit. Here, you are not only you're not only automating or leveraging existing things, you're actually defining things, right? You're actually going to be defining things. You are responsible for setting up security programs, or you are responsible for leading security teams by this time in your career graph, right? So you need to define policy as code. You might need to know advanced security engineering. How do you use security defaults? How do you apply security defaults? How do you use zero trust security engineering? How do you apply this approach to your stack? Advanced security architecture skills and the ability to communicate with senior management. Now, the idea here is at this stage, you're not just talking to developers or PMs. You're probably talking to the CISO. You're probably talking to the head of application security, or you may be the head of application security at this particular point in time, but you may be talking to management levels that are higher than you, and they have a different viewpoint. Their viewpoint is that of the big picture, right? Being able to communicate the big picture is a super underrated skill. And let me tell you that it comes under that whole soft skills thing I was talking about. That if you want yourself to make sense to these people, you need to think in a different way. What motivates them? What helps them do this or make your job easier, right? That's something that you need to think about extensively at this particular point in time. So for me, I would say this is kind of a broad. I'm not saying this covers everything, but this is like a broad skill map that I think gives you the direction of where you want to be and where you want to go. Now, obviously, you can start to make this more granular. Things like DevSecOps skills. Let's say you want to go deeper into cloud security, that's fine, or deeper into one of these things, that's perfectly fine. But the idea here is that you need to start thinking about where you stand in this list. and how you can approach newer things based on what you've learned from this list, right? So that is something that you do. That is something that I think you should all apply. And finally, of course, so this is the last slide of my talk, the impact of AI. Now, AI is something that I've been working on over the last 1 year or so with a little bit of, kind of deeper engagement, so to speak. I used to do a little bit of machine learning in the past, but not so much. I didn't really make too much sense of it simply because for my work at that particular point in time, the data sets were too small. But once LLMs happened and ChatGPT and OpenAI and all of this happened, and of course now there are LLMs being released every week. So this has changed the game completely. So this is pretty interesting. The space is pretty interesting. Now, AI, I've already made a video of this on YouTube, which I think will give you a little bit of insight. But let me talk about this. I'm going to say this right now that I don't know what I'm talking about here. Right? AI is something that is evolving so fast that, in fact, when we looked at, I looked at this interview between Sam Altman and Lex Friedman, and Sam Altman said that this is probably going to be like the earliest computer or the first computer in the 60s or 50s or whatever it is, OpenAI today or the AI models today. And that is shocking to me because they seem pretty advanced already. So this is a rapidly evolving space. So this thing can be great. This can be absolute crap. We don't know yet. This is something that we need to figure out as time goes on. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt. It's not perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. Now, AI, in my opinion, is today great for generation and terrible for validation. So if in terms of what it means for you, if your job is only in the generation space, I think your job is definitely going to be impacted, or your life is going to be impacted by AI. I know this is a controversial take, and AI generation does have mistakes and things like that. But today, as of today, it is great for generation, but lousy for validation. So if your job involves validating, which means that you need to rise up the value chain quickly, you can't just be stuck at the same level, right? You need to rise up the value chain quickly. If you can rise up the value chain quickly, you become somebody who verifies and validates and not just generates. If you become somebody that verifies and validates, I think you will have a much better way to work with AI. So your ability to work with AI becomes a lot more powerful if you're able to verify and validate and not just use it for generation, right? So if you're just somebody who's using it like Stack Overflow copy paste, then it's pointless. You're not going to make any sense. But if you're using it to verify and validate and actually build things that make sense, that's where you're going to make a pretty big impact for yourself. Leveraging AI for work is great. I use AI every day to learn stuff, to apply stuff, to generate, and then of course I know to validate, so I can validate. But I use it for generation validation. I don't use it for validation. I use it largely for generation. I've also developed skills that help me validate to a certain extent automatically and so on. So leveraging AI for work is going to be a superpower again for a generation purpose where you can validate, verify, and then integrate. Right. So that is something that you need to do. And leveraging AI for security engineering is going to be a gold mine, in my opinion. It's something that a lot of people will not have as skills. You will build it. If you build it as a skill set, you will add a lot more value to your own career as a security engineer. So this is something that I want to leave you with AI. So AI has tremendous potential. Right now, it's in that rapid rise of, it's seeing this, oh my God, it has this honeymoon phase of AI right now where everything is looking amazing. The prospects are amazing. The landscape is amazing. Everything is awesome. I don't know when we'll get into that phase of tiredness or phase of despair where we say that, oh my God, this is not doing anything for me. I'm not sure whether that will happen and when that happens or if that happens. But right now, it's great. It's great for generation. It's not great for validation, but I think that's really where our benefit comes in. Your job will really be a lot more secure if you are somebody who has the skills to verify, validate, integrate. That's really what I need to leave you with today. With that, I come to the end of my talk. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to take some questions now. And thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this talk. Right. Yeah. So I have multiple questions from Rahul, who says, there are also situations where companies are asking for unrealistic experience and requirements. How do we deal with it? Certificates. Now, certificates are definitely, they're like the easiest way to stand out, right? In some ways, right? Because it's low hanging fruit, right? If you get a certification, you have at least, you're not an absolute idiot. Sorry, sorry to put it that way. At least they see it that way. I personally, I don't set any value in certifications at all. But when you're dealing with large companies, large HR teams, and L&D teams, and all of that stuff, certifications does help you get in the door. But I think once you get in the door, your ability to actually execute as per the requirements of the job tend to be something that you need to think about, which is where the hands-on skills comes into the perspective. Most certifications, unfortunately, don't provide too much of a pathway to hands-on skills. Even the AWS security certification one is a MCQ thing, which I find pretty crazy. Simply because it's literally just MCQs, and you can always game an MCQ, but you can't game hands-on skills, and that is something that I find a little strange. But yes, certifications definitely get you in the door, but I don't think they will keep you there unless you're able to prove it. So that's question number one. So you said development background. I've already answered that question. I'm making a shift from VAPT to more DevSecOps at my current role. Threat model, Microsoft. We utilized Microsoft threat modeling tools, tried to complete the task, but there are other better ways to do it. Yeah, Microsoft threat modeling tool is actually pretty crap. Just to, I'm sorry to say this if somebody is from Microsoft, apologies, but it's not a great tool. It's a very high level threat modeling approach. Uh, Unfortunately, threat modeling today is, in terms of tools, if you want to do it quickly, there are no real tools. You do have very commercial ones that, like Erase Risk and so on, and they can definitely help you do a better threat model. But uh, threat modeling today is still very much an intellectual exercise. Uh, Probably leverage a little bit of LLMs and AI to do this, or to help you do this, but they're not exactly too many well-formed tools to help you do this right now. Okay, how do we build a working knowledge of cloud and DevOps? What are the technologies and platforms that are crucial to understand in depth? Okay, the technology and platform that are crucial to understand in depth are whatever your company wants you to understand, or whatever you are interested in understanding. Now, that is really the answer for this. So the answer basically would be that, let's say your company is already doing AWS. Let's say you're already on AWS. Then the easiest thing for you to do is develop AWS skills, right? There are multiple ways of thinking about the problem. Now, let's say, so AWS has a 70+% market share, right? So AWS is obviously the big one in this space. So I would say that if you're going to get AWS skills, then that's great. There's no problem with that. And to be honest, all these skills are transferable skills. If you learn AWS well, I can guarantee you will be reasonably good at Azure and GCP. Okay, reasonably good, just off the bat, just because you've learned AWS well. It's like languages, right? If you learn one language well, you will be able to apply the same principles to another language, and you'll have the same set of constructs. So go into depth with one cloud. So with AWS or Azure or GCP, doesn't matter what. Go into depth with one, and then start to build your skills from there. So focus on that. That is something that I would focus on. Okay, I have two more questions. In general, how do you search a topic in order to gain understanding, as in your go to your platform site to build, learn? Yeah, so for me, the way I learn is basically through projects. So I think of something I want to do with that thing. So let's say I want to do something, let's say I want to learn Rust. I always think of, okay, I want to build this project with Rust. And then I start learning it from that, right? So I would go about it that way. And always project based. The reason I always prefer project based learning is that you have a definite goal post in mind, right? So if you look at how we build AppSec Engineers, basically that it's all goal post driven. It's like saying, I want to do this. So how do I do this? There's a lab for that, right? So the idea for me would be, I want to do something, and I just do it. And I don't think about, okay, I need to learn these prerequisite things first. I first look at other people, how they've done it. I even copy code if I need to and do it. And then I figure things out. Most people think they have to write this original, Shakespearean work from the beginning. It's not necessary. Focus on understand. Your brain starts to form patterns based on things that have been done. So take things and rewrite them. Don't copy paste them. Rewrite them, and you'll start to understand that, oh, this is what it is. This is how it works, and this is why this works. So always take up projects and keep creating newer and newer and newer projects. That's how I learn. Um, Coming from a non-tech background, how can we get started into web application security as a fresher in the industry? Non-tech background, you then I would say first, this is something I told recently to somebody from marketing, and I told that person that he wants to get into web security and so on. I told him, learn programming first, learn how to build a web app first. Don't start with security. Don't care about security first. Learn, maybe Python is just the easiest language to learn. So start learning Python. Just take any course, watch YouTube videos, whatever, and learn Python first. Learn how to build a simple web application in Python, and then look at web application security. Because once you've started building a web application in Python, you would have already covered a lot of ground for you to understand web application security. So, for instance, if you know how to connect to a database and make database queries, you'll understand SQL injection much better. Or if you're able to uh, maybe render HTML, templates onto an HTML, render variables onto an HTML template, you'll understand cross-site scripting much better. So always start technology first. That's my general rule. Technology first is where you start. Don't try and get into web security. Technology first is everything. Right? So that's how I would do it. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. I guess not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm there.
And
Thank you.
thank you so much, Abhay, for that lovely talk. I myself was taking a lot of notes, and I'm sure it was helpful for all of the people attending. We even got a comment here from Rahul who said this is one of the talks he will keep coming back again and again for the next 5 years. So this was super helpful. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for that in-depth talk, Abhay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, all of you, and thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay.